Hello, how are you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Can South Africa win the 2023 Rugby World Cup? In a word, yes. But in this video, I'm going to explain why I think that's the case and why they're perhaps a team to watch at the moment after what we've seen from them this autumn. I don't think they're the favourites, but I think they are worth keeping an eye on. If you are new here, please subscribe to the channel, like the video and drop a comment down below. What do you make of this current Springboks team? A hit and miss 2022, but they finished it on a high with a win at Twickenham. So let me know down below how you see them getting on next year. All right, let's get into it. So I fully appreciate that we have a long way still to go until the Rugby World Cup. I think a lot could change between now and then. The Six Nations will play a part in how we see the Northern Hemisphere teams going into it. So there's still time for things to change. At the moment, I personally would have Ireland and France as favourites, even though neither of them have won a World Cup before. I just think based upon how consistent they've been over the last few years, I have to have them as my favourites. And then I've probably got the All Blacks and the Springboks just behind them as, I guess you wouldn't say dark horses because they're such established rugby nations, but as two sides that could certainly do a job in France. And I wouldn't necessarily at this point be surprised if they were to rock up at France 2023 and get the job done. But we'll wait and see. But in this video, I'll get into why. First of all, can they win the World Cup? Yes, they can. I think you've got a Springboks side who have a blueprint from 2018 and 2019 of how you can peak towards a World Cup. And that is so key. If you look at a side like Ireland, just as an example, they've always been a side that have been really good in between World Cups, certainly in the last few cycles, but haven't been able to peak for the World Cup. Whereas the Springboks, I think, after 2019, are a side that know how to do this. They were pretty poor in 2018 they started building, didn't they? But before Rassie came in, they were pretty poor. And then by the time they got to 2019, they blew England away in that World Cup final. So I think the fact that they have a blueprint there, the fact that Rassie's still there, Jacques Nienaber, a lot of the players are still the same, they will have faith in themselves to be able to find that extra couple of percent when it comes to a World Cup. And psychologically, mentally, I actually think that's quite an important factor. Also, in terms of the playing style, I mentioned this in the video I did at Twickenham after the England-South Africa game. And I think this autumn we have seen South Africa start to develop the style of rugby that they've been playing. When Rassie and Jacques first came in, they spoke about how eventually they would develop the game into something a little bit more expansive, but they've relied upon those building blocks of the kicking game and the set piece for a long, long time. We know that they can do them. At times it hasn't been the prettiest. I know there's been a lot of criticism towards the way the Springboks have played the game. Maybe some Springbok fans might think that's unjustified, particularly when you're winning Lions series and World Cups. I think I can understand where other fans are coming from. It wasn't the best to watch, but credit to the Springboks. It was winning rugby, but we're starting to see them build upon that style of rugby now. In the autumn, they haven't kicked the ball away as much. France, England, Ireland as well are some sides that kick the ball an awful lot. I saw two of Wales's games against Argentina and Georgia, and Wales must be up there. They kicked the ball away a huge amount, whereas it wasn't necessarily the Springboks that were kicking it as much as some of the other teams. I think they were looking to add layers to their game this autumn in terms of how they're able to attack. I think we started to see that. The Arendse try at Twickenham, sensational score, was a really good example of that as well. So they can still do the set piece, the physicality, the defence, the kicking game. We know the Springboks have that in their locker, but I think we're also starting to see them add some different layers to their game in terms of an attacking sense. And that could be very, very difficult and very dangerous for other teams to deal with, because we know how good they are at one thing. If they can add that other layer as well, then we're looking at a pretty all-rounded team. So that's why if I was a Springbok fan, I think I would be quite excited by some of what we've seen so far this autumn. They've still got a way to go. They're not the complete package yet, but I'm just saying I think we're starting to see them build some blocks in terms of what they already have as well. The final thing in terms of their playing style, in fact, someone mentioned this in the comments of the video I did after that game at Twickenham and said about South Africa's ability to absorb pressure and then take their opportunities when they come, which I think is a really great point. This South African side can be a bit of a sponge in that they just absorb the pressure, they hit you back in defence, and then they strike when they get the opportunity. Again, I would point to the Arendse try as a pretty good example of them doing that at Twickenham. Probably a bit of recency bias because it's the most fresh in my mind, and I was there. But I think, that's certainly something that they are capable of doing. Then in terms of the depth of the squad as well, I think we're starting to see some other players come through. For a long time, let's look at the wings. It was Mapimpi and Colby, wasn't it? Really is the wingers. Now you've got Kurtley Aronsa coming in, Caden Moody as well, who we didn't see too much of at Twickenham, but I've been impressed with in terms of what I've seen. I know he's done pretty well in the URC as well. So you've got guys like that. In the forwards, if we want to point towards Evan Roos, another big ball carrier that they've got in there if Dwayne Vermeulen is unavailable. Marvin Ory as well, who played in the second row. So I think we're starting to see some pieces come into play, adding depth to that Springboks squad. And also the importance of Willie LaRue. He's a guy who's been around a long time. English fans will know him so well from his time at Wasps in the English Premiership. And I think we're starting to see how important he is in this Springbok team, particularly at the moment. And this brings me on to my next point, because they don't really have a particularly established fly half, which I think increases Willie LaRue's importance as that ball player, as that fullback who can fit in that back line when they have the ball and be another ball player, another distributor. I think actually he's pretty key to the Springboks at the moment and playing some really good rugby. But that point I mentioned is a significant one. And I'd be fascinated to hear from Springbok fans on this. The lack of a recognised 10, how much for concern is that? Andre Pollard has been injured, but in all honesty, in my opinion, his form hasn't been all that good since the 2019 World Cup. I don't think he's been at his best form. I actually like Willemse, who has been playing fly half, can play fullback, possibly in the centres as well. He's kind of that new Frans Steyn kind of mould Springbok. I really like him. Do you see him as your long-term fly half? Is that number 10 position going to be a potential cause for concern for the Springboks? I guess we'll wait and see, but I would highlight that as probably the main area of concern at the moment for Springbok supporters. But let me know in the comment down below what you think. And also, it's just worth mentioning Faf de Klerk back to his best at Twickenham. Again, fans of the English Premiership will know him very well indeed, but he was superb, I thought. A complete pain, hassling and harrowing all afternoon. He's brilliant. So if the Springboks have him on form, yeah, they're going to be ticking. Just finally, as well, the last thing I wanted to mention in terms of this is the mindset of this Springbok team. They beat England and they went down to 14 in the final 20 minutes. And it was also a game outside the test window where they were missing quite a few of their players. They didn't have a full-strength Springbok team, but they still went and did a job on England. And it's not easy to do, even though England aren't playing well at the moment. And my last video on the channel, I spoke about my frustrations of this current England team, how they haven't really shown us anything. Twickenham's still not a place you necessarily go and blow them away, particularly. And I thought the scoreline, South Africa were so comfortable at the weekend. I think that's quite impressive to their mindset. And then the other thing to mention as well is the whole Rassie situation and him getting banned, the frustration with the officials. And if you just park whatever side of the fence you are in terms of that argument for the time being, I think the side is using that. They're using that as motivation and fuel, and I think it could be quite a powerful factor when it comes to the World Cup. A South African side that feel they're being hard done by, that feel they're not being treated well by World Rugby and by the officials and perhaps by the rugby community as a whole. Whether you agree with that or not, using that as fuel to kick them onto a World Cup I don't think can be underestimated. So those are some of my views on this current Springbok side. As I mentioned at the start of the video, right now I don't think they're a favourite for the World Cup. I just like the way they're tracking into 2023. They need to be more consistent because the results-wise at least, it has been a bit of a stop-start 2022. They haven't been consistent enough. They need to do that next year. But if they can, I just think there are factors there, as I've gone through in the video, which make them dangerous when it comes to the World Cup in France, and why if I was a Springbok supporter, I would be quietly confident that they're building nicely. There's other sides that are currently better than them in the world. Can they catch them up in the next 8 or 9 months or so? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I think it's a really interesting one. Also, subscribe to the channel. Would really appreciate it. And remember to like the video as well. And I'll see you in the next one.